What's happening, everybody? On today's show, Nick Saban and Brian Kelly weigh in on the Dallas Turner hit that knocked Jayden Daniels out of the game in LSU-Alabama. Kirby Smart gives a health update on Brock Bowers. Billy Napier responds to Gator fans booing. We've got SEC Players of the Week and much more. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on today to get started. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, we got plenty to jump into. Let's do it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start over at Alabama as Nick Saban was asked about a bit of a controversial play from Alabama's win on Saturday. We kind of talked about it on the podcast yesterday, but Dallas Turner in the fourth quarter called for roughing the passer after a big hit on LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels. The hit led to Daniels going into concussion protocol, left the game, kind of came back in, left again, and missed the rest of the game. And a lot of people argued it should have been called for targeting. Let me differentiate. Alabama fans say, no, it was a clean hit. It's football. Grow up. LSU fans and a lot of others have been saying it should have been called for targeting. Nick Saban asked about it Monday, said, look, I don't know if there is a technical coaching point there. You always tell players you want them to see what they hit the guy here, sort of in the chin. So it wasn't like a direct hit or an intentional hit to the head. It was a really good hit, but unfortunately his helmet did slide up and hit the guy. So it's a foul. If you hit the quarterback in the head, it's going to get called all the time. And we just want him to keep his eyes up and see what he hits and hopefully target down so it doesn't happen again. Alabama was up 2 touchdowns when it happened. So, you know, if Jayden Daniels stays in the game, does LSU come back to win? We don't know. But we'll hear from Brian Kelly in a bit on what he thought of the non-targeting call. Roughing the passer was called. Nick Saban also addressed his team having a road test this weekend in Kentucky. And it's always interesting. Alabama always seems to have, you know, sometimes they have a little bit of a letdown in the week after LSU. It's always a big game that they get up for emotionally. They get banged up. We'll see what they look like this week in Lexington. But Saban said, look, Kentucky is a completely different type of team than what we played against a week ago. And what we did last week is not going to have any impact on what we do this week. Kentucky is tough. They're physical. They're well coached. Coach Stoops does a really good job with his team in terms of the competitive character they play with and the intangibles they have. One of those guys that's had great success for them this year is their quarterback, Devin Leary. Nick Saban saying, look, they're 6-3. They got some really explosive players on offense. Quarterback has played really well for them. They have great balance on offense. Their defense is tough and physical. So we will see what test Kentucky gives to Alabama this weekend. One more note on Bama. Nick Saban was asked if he believes, you know, Jalen Milroe is getting more comfortable and more confident in this offense. He said, I think that's probably a combination of both. I think as Jalen gets more comfortable or confident, he's reading and seeing things so he can actually do a little bit more and do some different things. But I also think the rest of our guys around him are getting more comfortable and executing better. So all those things contribute to us being able to do a few things that we can take advantage of, but it's different every week in terms of what kind of defense you're playing and that sort of thing. So will we see more runs for Jalen Milroe? I would expect that. Maybe Tommy Rees starting to call plays that are tailored to Milroe's skill set. So we will see. All right, over at LSU, Brian Kelly and team trying to rebound after their loss at Alabama. He gave an update on Jayden Daniels. Like I said, after he took that hit against Alabama, sent him to concussion protocol. Kelly said, while Daniels has already made progress, he will be day-to-day leading up to their Florida game on Saturday. He said, I would consider him day-to-day He's going through the injury protocol, and he's made improvements. But this is a process that we'll just have to see how it plays out day to day. But I can tell you that he's made some progress. Brian Kelly also asked his opinion on the hit to Jayden Daniels. He said, look, we want to protect the quarterback, and certainly there was a penalty on the play. Targeting is looked at by the replay officials. They had plenty of time. I think we even went into, there was a timeout there. There was plenty of time to look at it, but they must have felt there was not targeting. We sent it to the league office because we felt like it checked all the boxes of targeting. But again, we want to protect the quarterback. The interesting part about that is that had Dallas Turner been ejected for targeting, he would have been out for the first half against Kentucky this week. Would that make a difference against Kentucky? I don't know, but just an interesting decision there. But Brian Kelly appearing on the Paul Feinbaum show Monday and discussed his team and how they need to bounce back and finish strong. He said this month of November is really about what are you interested in doing? How do you grow as a football team? We do the right things week in, week out. We can win 10 games again for the second consecutive season. So that to me is consistency in building a program. So that's all in front of us. Yes, we wanted to play for the SEC championship. That's the ultimate goal, get to the playoffs. But this football team has a chance to continue to grow, continue to move itself forward, being a good program and being a much better one. So LSU, look, hosting Florida and hosting Texas A&M and Georgia State, but hosting A&M in Florida, nothing to sniff at. They certainly want to win those two to finish the season strong. All right, over at Georgia, Kirby Smart, fresh off their great win against Missouri. They will face a really tough challenge in Ole Miss coming in this weekend. But first, Kirby asked to provide an update on his injured tight end Brock Bowers, recovering from that ankle injury. He's been out since October 14th. Smart said Bowers has been great in his recovery, but does not have a return date in mind for the junior. He said he's been great. He's done everything we've asked. He ran on Friday, did a good workout, had Saturday off. He continues to work. Going to do all he can try to get back, all he can do to try to get back as fast as he can. Again, Georgia hoping that he can return sometime before the end of the regular season. Big matchup against Ole Miss this weekend. Kirby Smart asked for his analysis on Jackson Dart, Ole Miss quarterback, and he said it starts with Lane Kiffin. He said Lane's quarterbacks take on the personality from him. They have a lot of moxie, a lot of talent. They play hard. They play with reckless abandon. He runs like a running back. He takes some hits and shows his toughness. He's not going to shy away from that contact. Smart also said the extra element of the run with Jackson Dart just gives them a competitive advantage over a lot of teams they play. You got a guy who can make all the throws but can also take off and run. One of his top targets this year has been wide receiver Trey Harris, and Kirby Smart said it is hard to put two people on him. You talk about their running backs, you talk about the quarterback, they look for matchups. Lane looks for matchups. He's looking for every opportunity he can to get a high percentage matchup in his favor. And obviously Trey Harris has been really, really good for Ole Miss this season. Kirby lastly asked about Lane Kiffin. He said, look, he does a great job. He's extremely intelligent. Doesn't overthink things, keeps it simple. He wants to beat you with fundamentals, wants to beat you with his players doing things within their system, and looks for those matchups. He looks for all the explosive opportunities. They've been one of the most explosive offenses, run and pass, in really the last 10 years in the SEC. He does what he does really well. So lastly, Kirby asked about whether beating Lane Kiffin would matter for bragging rights. He said, not any more than it would last week. We're not going to build something it's not. Everyone in the SEC is critical. It's critical for them. They're in the hunt for the West, for the playoffs, all the goals and aspirations they have. It's not about he and I. It's really about the players that go out on the field and make plays. Ole Miss at Georgia, 7 Eastern, Saturday night on ESPN. Meanwhile, over at Florida, Billy Napier and his team, some bad news as Florida D lineman Jack Pyburn announced on Monday he will miss the final 3 games of the regular season, tearing his ACL in the game against Arkansas. He started in place of Tyreek Sapp, who missed Week 10 against the Razorbacks. Billy Napier also saying that his team is in a good place right now. He said, it might be hard for people to understand, says there's a dozen plays in the game that if Florida had got them right, the outcome would have been different in their loss to Arkansas on Saturday. He said, look, we have to create that attitude and that mindset to deal with the adversity we have to overcome. And he said they will have a major test at LSU this weekend. He said it's a memory and experience you sign up for when you go play at Tiger Stadium. And lastly, Billy Napier asked about the booze in the Swamp this past weekend. He said, I think we handed it off on 3rd and 13 with the backup quarterback in, and we got some booze for that. But I think that was the right decision for the team. Napier said he refuses to panic about the overall state of the program and is going to let the season play itself out before they make any big decisions. Florida at LSU, 6:30 Central on SEC Network this Saturday night. And one more for you. Mark Stoops over at Kentucky. A big question about Devin Leary. Is he going to be good to go for this game against Alabama? There was a thought that he had an eye injury on Saturday, left the game. Kyer Sharon came into the game to close things out in their win over Mississippi State. Mark Stoops said he wants to stay away from adding anything on quarterback Devin Leary's eye issue. I did offer that Leary can see his play calling wristband now, which was the factor from him exiting the game. He said, quote, he can see it now. That was his response to the wristband. So Devin Leary did throw for 156 and 2 touchdowns, no picks in the win for Mississippi State before he came out of the game. Now, one more Kentucky note ahead of their noon Eastern kickoff against Alabama this Saturday. With the early kickoff time, the Kroger Field parking lots are going to open bright and early at 7 a.m. Eastern, according to Mitch Barnhart, the AD, for, quote, fans looking to get in as much tailgating as possible before the big game. The 7 a.m. opening is an hour earlier than the typical opening game. So Mark Stoops already made some comments earlier this year about, wanting fans liquored up and enjoying themselves with a beverage or two. So I'm sure the same thought applies here. They want the fans to get out there, be loud and proud ahead of this one against Alabama. All right. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll continue going around the conference. We'll start with some tidbits from Tennessee. That is coming your way in just a sec. And this episode is presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Look, you could score throughout this NFL and college season with FanDuel. They are America's #1 sports book. And we've been telling you about it. Look, right now, new customers, you get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, no better time to get on the action. The app is super easy to use. They get a wide range of betting options like spreads, player props, over-unders, and much more. And again, they got the college games on there as well. If you want to get in on some of these SEC games, they got it all up there for you. Go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon on your phone or your laptop. Of course, download the FanDuel app and get going here. We're already at the halfway mark for the NFL season. So if you want to get in on the action, FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, they are the official partner of the NFL. Run along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers coming back and checking us out on Friday. We will have our Locked On College Football Preview Show. You don't want to miss that. Where the guys will be previewing all the games happening this weekend in college football. Of course, we're talking specifically SEC here. So why don't we dive back into it as we continue going around the conference with all the latest tidbits. And next up, we head out to Knoxville, Tennessee, as they're getting ready for their big game, going on the road to Missouri. And Josh Heupel talking about the threat of Missouri's receiving core. Luther Burden has been so good. Josh Heupel noted they got other guys who can make plays as well. He said, look, they create a lot of big chunk plays, design shots down the football field. Luther Burden is a really good player, so when he gets the ball in his hands, he's difficult to bring down. They do a good job of moving him around too, so you got to keep track of where he's at. And we got to do a really good job against him. But he's not their only wide receiver. They got some other really good guys as well. Really good group of receivers. And the Vols secondary obviously took a hit, losing Kamal Haddon a couple weeks ago. He's out for the year. So going to be a fun one out there in Como Saturday at 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern between Tennessee and Mizzou. Josh Heupel also gave his thoughts on Mizzou quarterback Brady Cook. He said, look, he's smart. He's accurate with the football. He's athletic, has the ability to affect the game with his feet. We got to do a great job of the pass game. We got to affect him, not let him be comfortable in that pocket. While doing that, you cannot let him escape the pocket. He'll be dynamic and make great plays with his feet and with his arm as he breaks contain. He's obviously a part of their run game too, and that can hurt you there. So going to be a really fun one again. Tennessee, Mizzou, this coming Saturday afternoon. Over Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher reviewing the tape of the loss to Ole Miss, and Randy Bond, his kicker, missed what would have been a game-tying field goal in the final seconds of their game, losing 38-35. The kick just barely was grazed by an Ole Miss defender. On Monday, Jimbo Fisher was asked about the kick. He told reporters that it was simply kicked 1 inch too low. He went on to say, look, we had a heck of a game. We had opportunities in all three phases, whether it be offense, defense, special teams, that could have put us over the top. We have to find that inch on that one play or two plays. Fisher also updating some of the injuries to his team. There was some concern following their loss to Ole Miss that quarterback Max Johnson suffered a rib injury. On Monday, Fisher saying that the team is planning to have Max Johnson for their Week 11 game against Mississippi State. He also said running back Le'Veon Moss is day-to-day after suffering a lower body injury that will not require surgery. So we'll see. A&M's already down Connor Wegman at quarterback. If Max Johnson is banged up and not able to go, they are really digging deep on that depth chart. But see, sounds like Max Johnson's gonna give it a go. Lastly, Jimbo was also asked to address the ejection of his defensive lineman Shamar Turner, who punched the Ole Miss player below the belt, let's say, in the second half of last week's game. Fisher said that Shamar Turner is a good kid who simply lost his cool. He told reporters that the SEC nor Texas A&M plans to further discipline him. Shamar Turner will be available to play this week against Mississippi State. Some fans not happy with that on social media. Texas A&M, by the way, is yet to win a road game this year with losses to Miami, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. They have just one more true road test in Week 13 when they finish off the season at LSU. Other news around the conference. At Auburn, Hugh Freeze with a tough challenge going up against Arkansas on Saturday. Arkansas did just fire their offensive coordinator, Dan Enos, and the offense looked pretty good. And Kenny Guyton calling the plays. They put up 39 points in the win at Florida. Hugh Freeze says it's a completely different challenge now that Arkansas has a new offense. He said, I think it's pretty clear. They were frustrated with what they were doing, and I think it's a pretty stark difference. The guy who's calling it now, background is with the former offensive coordinator. I think it's a pretty good bet that you could throw a lot of the film out unless you're just looking at personnel. We probably need to pull a few games from last year, in my opinion, to go with that day they did at Florida. So, they change everything up. All your film work that you've done in prior weeks, throw it out the window now because Kenny Guyton's running completely different stuff from what Dan Enos was running. And speaking of Arkansas, Sam Pittman and crew hoping to, got their first SEC win. They won another one. And he provided an injury report on their team. Right tackle Patrick Kudus suffered a high ankle sprain early on in the game. Pittman said he could be out for a couple of weeks. He said, I don't know if we're going to get him back this week. Got a high ankle sprain. What I understand, depending on how high it is, depends on the weeks. It's not an extremely high injury. Pittman also said tight end Ty Washington suffered an injury during the first drive of the game. He will likely be out for the remainder of the season as he undergoes surgery. And he went on to say wide receiver Andrew Armstrong, he got sidelined after he took a big hit. Pittman said he believes he will be just fine, ready to go. He said we'll know a little bit more at practice today whether he's cleared from his headache, but I think he's going to be fine. And also Arkansas defensive tackle Anthony Booker Jr. suffered a lower leg injury. He should be ready to go against Auburn, according to Sam Pittman. Now, Pittman was asked about Kenny Guyton being promoted to interim offensive coordinator and about how the offense went. He said, look, I don't really know how I could not look at him after that performance. I spoke with him a little bit about that, about our timeline and what we're going to do here, obviously considering him for the full-time offensive coordinator job moving forward. But he said, we haven't made that decision yet, but I don't know how he could have done a better job than what he just did on Saturday. So, look, Kenny Guyton, you keep calling plays like that and getting the best out of your offense, you're going to have a real good chance that, they won't be looking to open up the checkbook and go and find the biggest, hottest name on the market this coming off season. They'll turn around and say, Kenny Guyton, it's your job, sir. Here you go. And there you have it. This is the latest news going on around the conference. When we come back, we are going to give you the SEC Players of the Week. We got some game times for Cupcake Week. Yes, that's coming in 2 weeks. It is absolutely brutal. Some of the games we're getting in 2 weeks. We'll get to that here in just a second. But first, a quick message from our friends over at the Gametime app. Look, you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way for you to buy tickets for all your sporting events. They got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime is taking the guesswork out of buying tickets. They are obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. They have deals on tickets right up to the start of these sporting events. Even an hour after it starts, it is the place to find last-minute seats. They got flash deals, sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, all of it. Take the guesswork out of buying your game tickets with Gametime. You go download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That will get you $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC, and thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Keep coming back. We'll be previewing some of the biggest games around the conference as the week goes along. We got some big ones here. I mean, Tennessee, Missouri is the big one. Obviously, Ole Miss at Georgia is the monster one, but pretty good undercard as well. Florida, LSU is always a fun one. Alabama, Kentucky. How do the Tide respond on the road in Lexington? Auburn, Arkansas, Mississippi State, A&M. I mean, these are some really, really fun matchups this weekend. So we had some good games a week ago that came down to the wire, and I think we're set up for some good ones happening this weekend as well. All right, but let's dive back into it. As we close the book on SEC Week 10, SEC announcing its Players of the Week for SEC Week 10. And first up, co-offensive Players of the Week. We start with Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe. Contributed almost 400 yards of total offense and 4 rushing touchdowns. And then Ole Miss wide receiver Trey Harris. He was the co-offensive player of the week in the SEC. 213 yards and a touchdown, the win over A&M. Meanwhile, defensively, Ole Miss safety John Saunders Jr., he was the co-defensive player of the week after he had a big interception against A&M. And Arkansas's Lorando Johnson was the other co-defensive player of the week. He had 5 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, and a sack in the win over Florida. Georgia kicker Peyton Woodring, he was the co-special teams player of the week. He had 3 field goals in the win against Mizzou. And Arkansas kicker Cam Little was the other co-special teams player of the week. He had 4 field goals against Florida. Bo Limmer, he was the conference's O-lineman of the week for Arkansas as they put up almost 500 yards against Florida. Georgia D lineman Nazir Stackhouse, co-defensive lineman of the week with the big fourth quarter interception in the win over Mizzou. Ole Miss's Xavier Harris, he was the other D lineman of the week with the game-winning block on A&M's field goal. Kentucky DB Ty Bryant, he earned co-freshman of the week. He had an 8-tackle game in their win over Mississippi State. And Arkansas's Jalen Braxton was the other co-freshman of the week. He had 4 tackles and a forced fumble. So there you have it. Close the books on SEC Week 10. We are on to Week 11. And a quick peek ahead to Week 12. The SEC announcing the remaining kickoff times for next week, which is Cupcake Week. A bunch of non-conference matchups. Ole Miss versus UL Monroe will play in the early slot on SEC Network. Alabama versus Chattanooga. Mississippi State versus Southern Miss. And A&M versus Abilene Christian. Those will all be on your streaming services or on your ESPN Pluses. So you'll have to go hunt for those if you want to watch them. All right, the games of note, Tennessee and Georgia. That will be the 3:30 Eastern slot on CBS. That will be a big one. Auburn and New Mexico State. They will kick off just after 4 on SEC Network. And then at night, Florida and Mizzou will be at 7:30 on ESPN. Kentucky and South Carolina will be on SEC Network at night. Arkansas will take on FIU in the evening on ESPNU, and LSU and Georgia State, they will close out the evening on ESPN2. So a night game in Death Valley. And one more thing before we get out of here. Joel Klatt from Fox Sports, big advocate for Nick Saban and the job he is doing this season on his latest edition of the Joel Klatt Show. Joel saying Nick Saban is a viable contender for Coach of the Year. He said that the 8-1 record must be particularly rewarding for Saban because of all the question marks they've had throughout this season. He said, I think if you're going to vote for Coach of the Year, there are several candidates, and rightly so, but one of them would have to be Nick Saban. With the team that he has this year versus the team he's had in other years, what he's been able to do and the way he's been able to morph and develop this group at Alabama has been very impressive. It's been fun to watch. I bet if you ask him, he would tell you that it's been a really fun year to coach. He said they did to LSU what you expect the really great Alabama teams to do to LSU. They own them physically late in that game. How will they respond against Kentucky this coming weekend? We will see. And that is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys again so much for making us your first listen every day. Again, shout out to our everydayers coming back and checking us out each and every day. We will have a loaded week this week with a full SEC on SEC slate in SEC Week 11. So we'll be previewing a lot of these games, giving you tidbits. We'll have some guests. So keep it locked. Come on right back here to Locked On SEC each and every day. For now, I'm Chris Gordy. You guys go and have an awesome day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow right here for an all-new edition of Locked On SEC.